Yeah, I figured this will be a fun one. We'll just kind of round robin it and discuss. And I don't know. I'm sure that there are going to be some things that each of us, or some names that each of us bring up that like will need some convincing on the behalf of the rest of us. So it should be fun. Let's see. Mark Mckeever. Hell yeah, the Trinity is back together again. That we are, my friend. Thank you for popping in. Helium29 saying good to see us all. It's good to see you too, buddy. Thank you. I think I'm pretty much ready to get going if you guys are.
Yeah, well, we should try to guess people on others' list. Like, I know for sure I know that's on your list. Night.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of them is very predictable. Real quick, I'll intro us in, and then we'll just kind of get going. So, hey, guys, welcome to the 77th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and other co-hosts in the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics, whether it be creators, constructs, adaptations. We hit it all this week. I am joined, as Mark has said, by the following two of the apparent trinity. The one and only, of course, in the center, Jace of the Comic Source, and to the farthest reaches of the screen, the Canadian Cape Crusader himself. Comic Boom, gentlemen, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here, man.
So, we're talking about hidden gems in the comic book industry, names that we think deserve a little bit more love. Obviously, this was all spurned by a brand new up-and-coming comic book writer named Keanu Reeves that nobody cares about. Nobody is buying his book, and I thought he deserved love. So here we are, gentlemen. But aside from that, seriously, aside from the Keanu books, there are some really great talents in the industry that are putting out top-notch books that might not be getting the exposure or the love or perhaps the higher tier work that they might deserve. And I think I'm just going to kill my most obvious right off the bat before anybody deprives me my chance of it. Ram V.
There it
is. Yeah. I've become an absolutely massive fan of his work. He has shown a ridiculous amount of versatility in his ability to generate thought-provoking independent stories like Blue and Green, like Gravity's Wall, Black Mamba, Paradiso, Savage Shores, and obviously the Many Deaths of Layla Starr. And then you go on into his big two work, JLD, Swamp Thing, Catwoman. I mean, the guy can kind of do everything. I haven't seen him really tackle a genre or a space in comics that I haven't found him successful in. Particularly what draws me is his indie work and things of the nature of Swamp Thing, because they evoke very much this Vertigo quality, this thoughtful, pensive melancholy of sorts. But you see where you see him pull a total 180 when he's on a book like Catwoman, and it's fun and it's heisty, and he's really taking advantage of the wacky sort of bombast of DC Comics. But yeah, man, I knew he was the obvious pick. I've been kind of swooning over Blue and Green for a long time now, so I had to get him out there.
Yeah, it's a totally valid choice, and we all knew it was coming.
Yeah. Well, he's also kind of on the thumbnail. I was going to put people's faces on each one of the Infinity Gems, but like they would get so small at some point, that I was like, well, I might as well just kind of put the most obvious up there. Clearly, I'm going to talk about him. He's an incredibly talented writer, one that I've had the good fortune of sitting down and talking to and hearing him talk about this sort of impetus or of some of his storytelling is really, really interesting. And I love kind of getting a peek behind the curtain. But yeah, I guess we'll go in a line. Jace, who is a comic book creator that you think we should all...
Yeah, so I was racking my brain. I want to talk about some artists because like right away when you hear any number of, I could rattle off 10 or 15 writers probably, 10 or 12 maybe off the top of my head really quickly that I think deserve more recognition. And it's such a writer-driven industry, and always has been, with maybe the exception of the 90s image guys. So I was thinking long and hard about some artists that I wanted to call out. And this guy, his star is on the rise. I think he's finally, with his most recent assignment, maybe going to get some of the recognition that I think he deserves. I'd seen him fill in on a few DC books here and there, and then he did the first Justice League annual for Scott Snyder's run, and then that just blew me away. The color work really kind of highlighted how great his line work was and his storytelling. It was a cosmic story set in space at the source wall. If you haven't read it, it's really great. And then I even sort of forgot about this guy because he was just doing fill-in work. And then we all noticed how incredible the art was on Future State Aquaman. And we were all just blown away by it. And again, I'll call out the color artist really knew how to make his work shine. And now he's on Action Comics with Philip Kennedy Johnson. I'm talking about Daniel Sempier. And again, it's great color work. So I want to acknowledge that the color artist that he's working with really gets the best out of his line work. But this guy, like, people need to be paying attention to this guy because and it's not just the rendering and the technical aspects of, anatomy and, proportions and camera angles and that kind of thing. The guy knows how to tell a story. The storytelling, the emotion he brings into it, the physical character acting, all of it's top notch. And, particularly on that Aquaman book, which I went back and looked at several times, I'm like, man, just the acting of it, it seems, based on what I know of him, and again, I think he's either Brazilian or he's Spanish. I think he might be Spanish. I think he might be from Spain. I've talked to him on Twitter before. We've talked about having him on the show. But I know Spanish is his first language. But he must have done a lot of work in Spanish comics or European comics, because based on the amount of work I've seen him do in Western comics, you wouldn't think he could be this good. And he really is top notch. And I wouldn't be surprised to see his name up there with some, big time names like a Gary Frank or a Frank Quitely or, somebody like that, who is just a kind of a gold standard, Tony Daniel, in that kind of same breath. So maybe a Jorge Jimenez, he might reach that level. Just needs to get on Batman, I guess. But he's on Superman now, and the art is spectacular. And yeah, it's the best thing about the Superman, or the Action Comics, I should say, book going on right now. So I wanted to give a shout out for Daniel.
That's a great pick. That's such a good pick. Like, not only is he just technically strong in his ability to design a page, but particularly you bring up like his character acting. There's a lot of personality in his artwork, and there are a lot of guys in the industry who I love that are able to imitate acting more so through camera, but there's something very pure about Sampier's art. And I had first also noticed him in like Justice League Dark when he was filling in for Alvaro Martinez Bueno, who would also be another great pick that I'm surprised I didn't think about for this list, to be honest with you. But man, yeah, he's an awesome pick. And I look forward to not only seeing what he does in the superhero space, but hopefully seeing him move on into some creator-owned stuff and seeing what he's like when he's sort of unleashed from any sort of confines.
Yeah, I'd love to see him do like a cosmic book. I mean, that Justice League annual still blows me away, because I think the other thing that I didn't mention that he gets right, his art evokes the tone of the story very well, and that's not always an easy thing to do. It's more of a nuanced sort of thing. It has to do with line weights and detail and not being not over rendering and things like that, which is, I think, not something you can necessarily teach. It's more of the touchy feely part of the art, as it were.
It's very instinctual. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can add Daniel Sempier. He's a fantastic artist. I disagree with that. I disagree. I agree with that 100%. We loved Future State when we talked about it. An artist that I wish would get more attention because he keeps fine tuning his trade is Liam Sharp, which is that I think the reason why I enjoyed his Grant Morrison's Green Lantern, which was a stretch because I'm not normally I'm not a huge I'm not a Grant Morrison apologist, but that was an enjoyable series. And even at times when I felt a little bit lost in the narrative, it was just the visuals of Liam Sharp sort of drew me back in and sort of pushed me and encouraged me to give it a second read through. And I'm glad I did. So that type of art matters. I just a quick comment here, guys. I came up with 10 new writers, and I came up with I actually did I have 25, I think, underappreciated writers.
Wow.
I couldn't believe how many there was when I did it. I was disappointed with the number of I came up with, there's like 10 women. I've discovered a pattern here, and it's interesting to note that the pattern very, very clearly with DC, the pattern is we got newer writers on DC. It's astonishing how many writers that used to be for the big two are now absolutely heating up the independent market. It is astonishing. Of the 27 writers, these were all former big two writers that are now heating up the charts on the big two. And interestingly enough, some of the higher profile women are working for the big two more so than in the indie. So there's some interesting patterns there. I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason to it, but I just find that kind of curious, and I can mention names in a moment. But if I had to narrow this down, 2 names stand out to me. And what are the rules here? I can only mention one.
I mean, we were doing round robin, one at a
Okay,
time.
right. Okay, I'll just do one then.
If you're on a roll, you do it, man.
Well, one is maybe a little bit of a cheat because he's kind of well known, but I still think he's underappreciated, and that's Rick Remender. I'm loving his Scumbag series. He did 7 to Eternity, Tokyo Ghost, Fear Agent, Last Days of American Crime, Black Science, Deadly Class. I mean, he's got the Tokyo Ghost movie series coming out on TV. That guy is he's a great writer. He's earned it. He's a great personality. He works with very different artists. He's written pretty much every genre you could think of, and he's just heating up the charts. But the name that I think right now a lot of people aren't fully aware of is Dan Waters. I've been reading his Coffin Bound, which is sort of like a Mad Max meets Sandman. Very, very interesting. Deals with themes of religion and yet action, and just very kind of dreary. This guy's written Lucifer. I read his Lucifer was good. Another series called Deep Roots. I've not read that. He's read one that I read the first issue of called The Picture of Everything Else by Vault Comics. Again, this guy's Dan Waters, and that deals with the guy, the guy who did the paintings that come to life. Dorian Gray. The story of Dorian Gray. He would as long as the picture stayed young, he would stay young. Well, the painter who drew the Dorian Gray painting, this is the story about the picture of everything else, and it's a story about what if this painter drew landscapes or drew the environment instead of a person, and the effect that would have. And very interesting. He's definitely someone to watch out for. He's also he's writing Homesick Pilots right now, which is sort of like a sort of punk rocky and dealing with haunted house. And he's just very creative, very imaginative, and yeah, definitely one to look out for. Dan Waters. And out of all the ones on the list, he's maybe a little bit of a wild card pick. I put him on there, and I got a couple of DC picks, but that'll be it for my first round.
Okay.
I can't believe you didn't mention Low by Remender. That's probably my favorite.
I'm sorry. You know what? Do you know that's his only title that I don't actually like? I'm not a fan of Low. I'm just not a fan of the art. Actually, the art I think takes away from the narrative.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I guess I'll break into an artist that I feel his star is rising, but perhaps not as fast as the quality of his work would allow. And I'm going with Jacob Phillips, Sean Phillips' son. Not only is he a tremendously talented colorist in his own right, he's worked on his father's material and does a brilliant job playing with. Here's the thing is that he's not subtle, but he's very poignant with the way that he spots his colors. They're not any sort of super smooth gradients, but he does it in such an evocative way that you know when and how you should be feeling something based on his color work. He's also doing some pretty great interiors in a book called That Texas Blood, which certainly harkens to his father's style, but he begins to use not only his line work but his own coloring to shift it in a direction that is a little bit more of its own. Brilliant with camera, absolutely brilliant with camera, and cinematic in the way that he uses his layouts. He really knows how to stop a scene and to get you to sit there and sink into a singular image, but also to get you to feel the overall effect of the sequence that it's in, what's coming before, what's coming after, and how do all of these things work in tandem. And he does so with very simplistic layouts. He's not overly complicated. He doesn't do any crazy three-dimensional designs, but in that he's almost Mazzucchelli-esque in the way that he approaches it, and by knowing where he can pull back on some of that visual detail, he knows how to lure the eye. And there is an inherent mastery in visual storytelling when an artist could do something crazy high detail but knows when to pull back for the sake of legibility, and I very much think he embodies that.
I just want to add that you mentioned I had no idea that he drew. He was the artist on That Texas Blood, because Chris Condon, the writer of That Texas Blood, is actually one of the new writers I was going to mention as an up and comer that some people might want to check out. Now, full disclosure, I was a little disappointed with how That Texas Blood ended. But having said that, the build up, the story, especially that first issue, man, it really hooked me, and the art really was good. You really get a sense of that small town feel, and it really felt like I was watching and reading a Netflix series. So yeah, that's a good call.
Thanks. Yeah, Condon was also on my list as well. I think he's really talented. Excellent pacing, excellent at building suspense. He really knows how to play with you in terms of the way he's pacing the book. He'll build you up to something and get it sort of at a boil, and you think he's going to pull the trigger, and he doesn't. He waits for you for the water to overflow, and then he hits you with something, and it's striking. And it might not be the biggest twist. I think that some of the twists are a little bit telegraphed, but he knows how to not let that bog down the effect on the reader. And his dialogue is very sharp, by the way. I talk about dialogue in comics a lot. He's very effective at making people sound like people while also being economic, because when you're writing a comic, you can't sit there and write out a conversation in a comic like you would in film. You simply don't have the space or the time, and he really knows how to get that feeling off without being overly verbose. So that's a huge skill in and of itself.
Yeah, I saw somebody in the comments mention Stephanie Phillips, and I agree with you 3 years ago when we first had her on the podcast talking about her very first Aftershock book. But I feel like she has sort of graduated now. I mean, she's on Harley Quinn. That's a pretty big profile book, and maybe people still don't have her on their radar. But yeah, I just want to acknowledge that. But Mark Mckeever actually gave a shout out to my second pick that I was planning on mentioning, which is Kyle Higgins. And with the exception of Power Rangers, I've read everything this guy's done, even Ultraman from Marvel, which I'm not normally an Ultraman fan. I'm not a Power Rangers fan either, although I hear that his Power Rangers run is really, really good. But here's the thing about Kyle. It's not just writing. He's bringing other talent up. I almost think of him as like the next Robert Kirkman in terms of editing books and nurturing talent. And he's working with former NFL All-Pro linebacker Lance Briggs on a Kickstarter book that's coming out. He went to film school. He's got his fingers in Hollywood and that kind of thing. But, from his Nightwing run to Deathstroke to the creator-owned stuff he's done, like Cowl, Hadrian's Wall, Dead Man's Hand was absolutely fantastic. And now clearly Radiant Black is finally making some waves, and maybe he's starting to get some of the recognition that he deserves. But I don't think that if you ask people to name, their top 20 comic book writers, that he would be on a lot of people's lists. He kind of flies under the radar. And maybe it's just because he's not as prolific as some of these guys, like a Charles Soule or a megastar like a Scott Snyder, or he hasn't had a comic property or a comic story adapted into other media, like Rocky's aforementioned Rick Remender, which I agree he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. But if you were to say, oh, he created the Winter Soldier, everybody's, Kyle hasn't done that. He hasn't had something like that hit yet. So I think he's still flying under the radar, and he's super talented. He's a great guy. And like, if he's putting out a book, if he's writing a book or he's editing a book, I automatically check that book out, because I trust his talent if he's writing it, and I trust his judgment if he's editing it. And I've discovered some great books that way. Self-Made is great, from writer Matt Groom. Kyle's editing The Inferno Girl from Matt Groom that just finished its Kickstarter campaign yesterday. And obviously he's writing Radiant Black, which is selling out for Image every issue. So he must be doing something right. It's great to finally see him starting to get some recognition. Hopefully that star continues to rise, because I've seen some of his film work too. He debuted a short film, or didn't debut it, but he screened it at WonderCon one year, called The Shadow Hours. And it basically was about these two guys, and it wasn't completely explained. He made a short film in the hopes of selling it to a studio to be able to make the feature film. And it was basically the story, and it wasn't explained if they were twins or brothers or what it was. But one guy could only be awake during the day, and the other guy could only be awake at night. And I know that somebody else came out with a movie later on, and that's why Kyle had trouble selling it. While he was making the short film, somebody else had a similar idea, and they actually did sell it and make a feature film. But it was so interesting because they were private detectives. That was their job, but everybody thought it was one guy, and they would leave recordings on a voice recorder for the other person. Here's what you need to know about what happened, blah, blah, blah. And one of the guys gets a girlfriend, and that throws a wrench in things, and it goes sideways from there. But it was fantastic. The guy's an incredible filmmaker, an incredible storyteller, just super talented. So good on you, Mark Mckeever, for stealing my second pick there. That's 100% the first writer I wanted to mention.
Well, I'm going to sneak in two here. The first, what's that?
I said, do it.
Yeah. Well, the first one I got to mention is Amelia Clark and Marguerite Bennett with Mother of Madness. Hey, look, if Keanu Reeves can do it, why not Amelia Clark, after all? And I think Amelia Clark, I think she owes us for the, even though it's not her fault that Game of Thrones had a horrible ending. She was Daenerys, and she turned into quite a bloodthirsty killing bitch at the end of that. So let's blame her and expect her to make it up to us by actually ending up being a very good comic book writer. Who knows? I think Marguerite Bennett, who's going to be the artist on Mother of Madness, and I believe maybe co-writing with her, if I understand it correctly.
Marguerite Bennett is not an artist. She's just a writer.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I always associate Marguerite Bennett with
Marguerite Sauvage.
Thank you. Yes, because they're always a team, right? But in any event, it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with. Mother of Madness is about a single mom named Maya who discovers that she has superpowers and fights human I think sex traffickers. I think so. It's tongue in cheek. It's at least as sophisticated a plot as Berserker, for God's sake. So I see no reason why it can't be equally as entertaining. I'm actually curious. I don't know. Do any of you guys know who the artist is going to be on that series?
No, I think that it's all I believe is that it's a Hispanic artist, but I'm not.
Oh. It's going to be interesting to see what it. Go ahead.
I haven't heard, but I know Amelia Clark seems super excited. She's been putting all kinds of stuff out on social media, so I had no idea she was a giant comic fan. I've never seen a single second of Game of Thrones, so I have no preconceptions, and I'm curious to check it out, because I agree with you that Marguerite Bennett is very underrated. She's an incredibly talented writer for sure.
Yeah. That was actually, those are two and one there, because in my crazy mind, I thought, I was just thinking in terms of writing, and I thought Marguerite Bennett was the artist, so I screwed that up. But in any event, my other choice, and I think she's still underrated, she's had some high profile work, is Joelle Jones. Joelle Jones I think she really made a name for herself with Lady Killer. She both wrote and scripted and drew Lady Killer. I thought it was a great work for Dark Horse. And she comes along, and then when she did Catwoman, it was very underwhelming. Her writing of Catwoman, her art was great, but her writing of Catwoman was all over the place. Her pacing was terrible, like it just never worked. But then she surprised me with Future State. Her writing of Yara Flor in Future State, I thought she was really coming into her own, and I really think now she's hopefully a little bit more comfortable in her capacity as a writer. And with her now writing Wonder Girl that's coming out, I think she's one to watch. I really do. I think she's one to watch. I think she's learning the ropes. I think she's hopefully learned most of them, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, Lady Killer got optioned for a movie, I think. All right, not option, but they're moving forward with development.
Oh,
so it could be, it could be her star could be on the rise if that actually hits. It'll definitely raise her name recognition for sure.
Huh. Yeah, interesting pick. I guess who do I want to get in here? You know what? I'll mention somebody who is actually well known for working with my first pick, for working with Ram V, and it's Anand Rk, a super versatile artist. He's done he's going to be doing the upcoming Radio Apocalypse with Ram. They've done Gravity's Wall, Paradiso. I believe he did These Savage Shores, and he did Blue and Green, and each one of them are very sort of different stylistically. Blue and Green being this very sort of impressionistic work, the others being a little bit more traditionally, or I wouldn't even say traditionally cartoony, but more like independent cartooning. He's just a incredibly talented guy who is really able to flex his stylistic and visual storytelling muscles. You look at something like Blue and Green and the way he lays out the page, you'll randomly have a hand breaking out of the panel border, wrapping around it as if it were the sort of frame of a door. And there's just a brilliance in the draftsmanship. And I also want to shout out his colorist on Blue and Green, although I think this is his only credit in comics. John Pearson does an incredible job. I mean, I obviously have had a lot of really positive things to say about Blue and Green as a whole, but it's because it fires on all cylinders from every level. And visually, what Anand and John Pearson are able to do in the book are absolutely stellar. The way they play with tone, the way that they're able to sort of go back and forth between focus and the tightening of detail in order to create a sense of atmosphere or a sense of emotion is just nuts good. I can't speak highly enough about him. Literally to the point where I've sought out John Pearson to do work with me on books because I would lose my fucking mind if he were to do so.
All right, so my next pick, I'm kind of curious if you guys have even heard of this creator. It's an artist, and the biggest reason that I'm choosing her is she definitely doesn't have a high profile. And from the first time that I saw her work, which I was on Vigilante Southland in 2016.
That series never lasted. That series was canceled.
Yeah, I was going to say, which is a series that never even had its last 2 issues released. The sales were so bad on it that they released the first 4 issues singular as single issues, and then they released the trade. They never even so people just didn't go for it. Gary Brown, who's a mystery prose writer, was the writer on it, and it was only okay in terms of narrative. And the art by Elena Casagrande is the artist that I want to shout out. And you could see the talent and the potential there. Her storytelling, her visual storytelling, her transitions from panel to panel, the blocking, character acting, they were all pretty solid. The problem was that her actual anatomy and the actual rendering and the actual line work wasn't that great. It was average at best, but I think she got the gig on the strength of what she did do well, which was, the narrative pacing and those other things that I mentioned. Well, she's on Black Widow now, written by Kelly Thompson. And I had seen a few things that Elena had done in the meantime. She did a few kind of one-shots in different anthologies. She did one of the pages in the Captain America tribute or Avengers #4 tribute issue or whatever it was. And then, like I said, a few different, like a Batman Secret Files story here and what have you. But the next regular gig where I was seeing her art month in and month out, because I was the only one that bought Vigilante Southland, all 4 issues. But yeah, I picked up this Black Widow title because I love Kelly Thompson, the writer, and I was blown away. She still had all those strengths that she had before, the character acting, the kinetic action scenes, the visual pacing, and especially the transitions from panel to panel. But all of a sudden, her line work has just grown leaps and bounds. Like, if you put it side by side, did tell me that it was the same artist, I don't know that I would know it was the same artist. It's gotten that much better. And we all know how people love Mikhail Janine, one of the best artists who's working in comics. And he did this starting way back on Grayson, where you would see, he would show the movement of Dick Grayson doing kind of these acrobatic gymnastic moves by showing, different exposures, 3 or 4 different scenes of Dick Grayson as he's doing a flip or what have you. Well, Lena's bringing that same sort of technique to Black Widow in the female form, in her style, to show off these awesome fight scenes. And that's the thing that is translating so well and is what's helping this book shine for me. I mean, the thing about Black Widow is, and it comes through in the version of her with Scarlett Johansson in the MCU, she's a very physical character in terms of she doesn't have any superpowers, right? What she is one of the best hand-to-hand combatants in the entire Marvel universe. And so when you bring that style and you bring those multiple exposures and great line work that's really clean, as opposed to the previous work I saw that she did on Vigilante Southland, which was not clean at all, it's night and day. And her, I shout it out every time an issue comes out of Black Widow because the art is so amazing. It's a great title, and I don't think enough people are reading it, but her work is just, I don't know what she did. I don't know if she went to art school in the meantime. Like, it is incredible the amount of growth that she's had. And I can't believe I don't hear more people talking about what incredible artwork that Black Widow has. I mean, it is stunningly good. So she deserves all the credit in the world for hard work. She's the anti JR. Her artwork was and got really, really good, whereas JR's artwork was good and
I can tell you, Jace, that I'm the other guy. I'm the only other guy who also collected all of the issues of Vigilante Southland. I got all of them myself, and but I honestly never made the connection. I also collect Black Widow. It's one of the I only collect 4 Marvel titles, and one of them is Kelly Thompson's Black Widow.
And you didn't even know it was the same artist.
I didn't know. It never even occurred to me, to be honest. Well, to be honest with you, Vigilante Southland has long since left my mind and on my radar until you mentioned it. So,
well, she had such a unique name. And it just always stuck with me that I saw the potential there, and I felt a little let down by the finishing details, if you will. Yeah. And so when Black Widow came out, I was like, man, this art's so great. Who's the artist? Elena Costa. Why does that sound familiar? Wait, wasn't she the artist on Vigilante Southland? And I went back and looked, and I'm like, holy crap, she has really put in the work. So
what's it's good that you're mentioning her. It's good that Casagrande is getting some love here, because Black Widow #5 is getting a lot of speculator love, but it's for Adam Hughes it's for Adam Hughes cover, and it's not even because of her interior art, which frankly rightly so deserves some love. So it's great that you're mentioning it, and I agree with you. I mean, it was one of those, let's face it, I admit I take, how often do I've been collecting comics for so long, and I don't know about you guys, but I often take good art for granted. And, lots of times how many comics have I read, and I don't sit back and appreciate the art. And I even review I generally review comics more than your average layperson. So, but yeah, no, it's a good call out. I guess I'm next.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Wow. You guys already mentioned, I wanted to give a shout out to Robert Venditti on like all the Bad Idea guys, like all of them, and ENIAC with Matt Kint and Doug Breathright on ENIAC, really good stuff. I guess I was going to mention Stephanie Phillips, but it's kind of a cheat. She's kind of already made it. There is I got a pile here. I'm gonna mention one that's gonna sneak under the radar for people, and you're gonna think it's a massive cheat, but I think it's worth mentioning because this really shocked me. But Tom Taylor is writing a series, and it's the publisher is Penguin Random House for the Razor Bill imprint, and it's called Neverlanders. Tom Taylor is writing it, and the artist is John Samariva, and he's the artist that he was the artist on Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Star Wars and the current Star Wars adventures. And I think this sucker is really, I mean, this is the young adult line for Penguin Random House. What I find fascinating is that it's not DC Comics that's publishing this under the young adult line. It's actually Penguin Random House, who is not only apparently shipping comics for DC and maybe for Marvel now or whatever, but apparently now that they also have their own publishing line, which for the young adults, which Tom Taylor is part of. So I find that interesting, and I openly wonder, is this going to be a trend? I mean, is Penguin Random House not only going to be, I mean, they're shipping the comics, but now are they slowly starting to woo these big name creators over to them, offering them better contractual deals? Because I thought that was very interesting. I never, frankly, John Samariva, his artistic style is not necessarily my cup of tea, but if you're a fan of Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have their own sort of unique style to begin with, and that sold very well, that series. And Star Wars Adventures I've been enjoying, but again, I just took the art for granted. So Tom Taylor, I mean, the guy is just absolutely hitting it out of the park. He's got his Superman coming out. He's got a secret Marvel project coming out. With his Neverlanders is coming out, Batman the Detective, Nightwing. The guy is just absolutely heating up the charts, and yeah,
he's got his Netflix cartoon, The Deep, which is how I first discovered his.
Oh, really?
Work. Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that was long before. That was even before Injustice. I wasn't on Netflix then, but the Deep, started out as a comic and then got made into a cartoon. Yeah, think Incredibles, but underwater, basically.
See, wow. I thought you were cheating with Liam Sharp, and now you're definitely cheating with Tom Taylor.
Well, look, okay, let me throw this one out real quick. Maxwell Prince for Ice Cream Man and Haha.
That's fair.
Maxwell Prince for Ice Cream Man, and now that's arguably one of the best indie comics on the market right now, probably in most people's top 10. But he's, I've read one issue of Ice Cream Man, and I've only read the first issue of Haha. Both great, sort of like almost like Twilight Zone stories, and invariably involving a clown of some sort often. But at least Haha does. But in any event, yeah. So that's a great example of someone who can tell a wide array of stories of varying content. And I mean, who doesn't love a good Twilight Zone story that deals with virtually any subject matter, but makes you think and is eerie and disturbs you at some level, in a way that you never forget the story. I mean, there's a reason why lots of people are talking about Ice Cream Man, and why basically Haha is, I don't know if it's a spin-off, but it's certainly, if it's the same writer. So obviously he wants to, he recognizes good, easy money when he sees it.
Yeah, for sure.
So obviously, if you're not the writer or the artist, you're almost guaranteed to be underappreciated, despite the fact that there are obviously writers and pencilers that are underappreciated. But I wanted to give a shout out to a colorist, Elizabeth Breitweiser. I think is incredible. She doesn't do a high volume of work anymore, but what she does do is abso-fucking-lutely spectacular.
She used to do every Sean Phillips and who's the writer? Who's the writer?
Brubaker.
Yeah. She used to do every Brubaker and Phillips book basically until Jacob Phillips came along.
Yeah. I mean, but she also, despite the fact that I have a distaste for Tom King's Batman run, her colors on Lee Weeks and Cold Days are stunning. Her stuff with what's his name? Garth Ennis and Steve Epting on Sarah are brilliant. She's so good.
What's her
at
last name? Sorry, what's her last
Right.
name?
Breitweiser.
Breitweiser.
She does a lot of the Indiegogo books for the Comicsgate guys, I think now.
Does she?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's disappointing. Yeah, well, despite that, that doesn't affect, just the objective quality of her coloring. She's so brilliant at using color to evoke a sense of atmosphere. Uses, a very subtle sort of a set of decision making skills when knowing how to create very sort of subtle blends, but also just having moments of crazy high contrast pop. Just embraces, I think, in very many ways, the full capacity of what a colorist can do in comics. So yeah, much respect. I mean, they're generally, colorists don't get the love that they deserve because they can totally make or break artwork. I mean, it's just incredible stuff. So yeah, Elizabeth Breitweiser deserves a lot of credit. Clearly has some decision-making skills that are not up to par with her comic book creative
Well,
skills.
I think her husband's a creator too, and he's kind of in with that whole group. So, yeah. But she's uber talented, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Anand?
Yeah. So my next pick's a writer, and I know that Rocky is familiar with his work, but I'm not sure how many of the viewers are going to be familiar or unite. But it's Zach Kaplan. Has done several titles either at Top Cow or Aftershock. Most recently, now I'm drawing a blank. Join the Future, his latest Aftershock title. His Eclipse title at Top Cow was just incredible. If you haven't read it, if you haven't read that, or you haven't read Port of Earth, the really high concept ideas that Zach approaches from a very interesting point of view. With Eclipse, it's very much through the point of view of the character Baxter, and it's kind of hyper focused on him and his worldview. And if you're not familiar with the story at all, it's basically, what if one day the sun stops being life-giving and becomes deadly, basically, and everybody is forced to go and live underground and only come out at night and whatnot. And so it's just a great high concept. And from the moment, I remember sitting in the Top Cow panel at San Diego Comic-Con, I think it was 2016, and Matt Hawkins was talking about this book, and they showed some art, and I was hooked. And we had to wait a whole year because basically Zach had the perfect artist in mind, but he wasn't available. And here this guy had no comic work, had no published stuff out there, and he could have said, you know what, let's find another artist, but he chose to wait. He chose to keep working the day job, and he chose to wait because he believed in the artist that he had originally chosen. And he waited a whole extra year until that artist was available and had it come out. And it went, I think, 16 issues or 19 issues instead of the original 4, because it did really, really well. His other concept at Top Cow's Port of Earth, and that's this whole idea of aliens finally come to Earth, not to conquer, not to be some kind of benevolent benefactors, but with a business deal. Like, they want to set up gas stations, the equivalent of gas stations, so Earth can be a place interstellar travel stop to refuel. And with that book, he took it from the point of view of let's not have anybody's point of view. Let's do everything third person, and we're seeing everything through these kind of, for lack of a better term, reality TV cameras. So he's just presenting all sides, and you're forced to make your own decisions. But it's these kind of ideas that are told with a different point of view that allow us as readers to get invested in the story in different ways. And he's got, a lot of great concepts like that. Lollipop Kids, or not Lollipop Kids. There was another one, Lollipop Kids was Adam Glass, but he had another title at Aftershock that was about these kids that went underground, and they were looking for their lost parents. And it was all about Zach had gone on this tour the subway systems in New York and about the whole undercity that's there. And that was incredible. And then, like I mentioned, the Join the Future. So he's got several projects going on right now at several different publishers. He has written a little bit for DC. And I'd like to see some of his ideas on some established characters, but him and I have talked about it. He's not sure. I mean, he's doing well right now in the indie, and he has so much more control over it. And a lot of his stuff has been optioned for TV and whatnot. So, why not keep telling the stories where you have, so much more control? So, more power to him. And I'm not picking him just because he's a friend. He's a really, really talented writer. And like I said, I know that Rocky read Join the Future and liked it. So
it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to give a shout out for Zach. He's just super, super talented. So Lost City Explorers is the other book, the Aftershock book that I was trying to remember about underground New York sewers and whatnot. So I don't know if you'll watch this, Zach, but I got your back, bro.
Well, I have there's one person who I rarely have ever seen do anything for the big two. You guys will correct me, and I will, as you often do. Thank you very much. If I'm wrong, but I love Brian Haberlin's art. He's the artist on Sonata. He was the artist on Cyberforce, Spawn and Witchblade. He often works with David Hine. David Hine, the writer, he's also very good. They have a new Image title coming out that I just read this past week called Jules Verne's The Lighthouse. Prior to that, my cover of the year in 2020 on Jace's Comic Source podcast was an issue of The Marked. It was a cover by Brian Haberlin where a redhead was sort of like it was sort of a ripoff of a famous photograph. But in any event, fantastic artist. The Marked is a series where a bunch of where tattoos bestow magical powers on the people that have the tattoos, and artistically he was able to make it was just extraordinary how he made the tattoos come to life and made them look all the more powerful and magical in terms of how the tattoos would influence the individual characters. And it's one of those stories that absolutely would not have worked but for the artist. Because some stories just cry out, you need the artist to pull off and to give the visual to the reader, or it's not going to work. The Marked, referring to the tattoos, was precisely one of those stories that cried out for a great artist, and it got it in Brian Haberlin. And the covers are just fantastic. And just Jules Verne's the Lighthouse deals with space. It's we all know what a lighthouse is. It helps ships come into a rocky harbor. In this case, it has to do with an area of space where this lighthouse navigates starships through space. Anyways, the last time I was this impressed with how somebody drew space was actually Liam Sharp on Green Lantern. And Brian Haberlin, what he brings to the page with his line work, his art is extraordinary.
Cool. Yeah, I've heard the name, but I'm not familiar with the work. That's interesting.
Yeah, he has never worked for the big two. He's a lot of work for Top Cow and Todd McFarlane Studios. He's a really interesting guy to talk to. He's done a lot of stuff in like the 3D modeling and video game space. When they redid Spawn Witchblade a couple of years ago, they even had an app that Brian's studio was involved in, this 3D art studio, where you know how you have those filters, like the cat thing or whatever. You could put on you turn the app on and you like hold your camera on your iPad or your phone up to your face, and it would put the medieval Spawn mask on your face. And then you could take a picture and send it to all your friends, stuff like that. I can't remember is it Speed of Light Studios or Light Speed Studios or something like that is the name of his art studio. But really
actually, that in fact, the app got even better than that. You could point it to the comic, and the pages.
Oh, that's right.
3 or 4 pages on the comic would become 3-dimensional. It was awesome. Like literally, I mean, I'm actually very disappointed it never caught on, because I got every issue of that series of the Lighthouse, and shining the app on it, when those pages became 3-dimensional, that was kind of cool. I
Yeah.
gotta admit, you're looking at it on the phone, it's like, oh man, back in the day. But it's really odd how that never really caught on. I guess it's just the way things, unfortunately. But
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Sick. Well, firstly, Mark, thank you for the shout out. I appreciate it.
This Trevor Fernandez Lankevich. Did I say his name right?
You did.
I'm always mispronouncing famous people's names, so you should be flattered.
Profoundly good. It
Well,
only
you didn't mispronounce it, so that proves he's not famous.
fair enough. Yeah. It only took you like 3 years to learn how to do it. Congratulations.
There you go.
Appreciated. Yeah. If you want to follow Mark's advice and check out my comic book ventures, there's a link in the description below to my shop where you can pick up copies of the first issue to Area 51, the Helix Project, the second of which is somewhere on a printing press out in China at the moment, and we'll be seeing hopefully your hands and your eyeballs very, very soon, with issue 3 likely to drop towards the end of the summer. And some more fun announcements on the way. So check it out. Buy my little picture book. I would deeply appreciate it. Thanks. Aside from that, one artist that I really wanted to talk about, because I've been talking about a lot of guys that are kind of steeped in indie, and I certainly don't want to neglect my my superhero guys, my guys, the guys who are the bread and butter of the industry. And man, I think Jamal Campbell might be the greatest superhero artist of this generation. The only reason I say might is because I don't know if he quite has the body of work, but god damn is this guy good. Brilliant at expressionism, brilliant figure work. He also colors his own art, and there is just such a vibrancy to his work. I mean, it's tremendous. And not only does he succeed on that very sort of intuitive level, that level that you can't teach, he is also just technically excellent. He pushes his boundaries when it comes to layouts, and within those layouts really knows where visually we need to be in the scene, in the moment, in order to get the full grasp of what he and whoever he is working with is trying to go for. Back when he was doing Naomi, despite my distaste for contemporary Bendis, his art always brought me this close to picking up the book, but alas, I have taste. I'm sorry, Jamal. I'll buy art prints. But his work on Far Sector has been absolutely excellent. And I think he deserves more love, man. I think he is, in terms of ability, a generational talent, the likes of Jorge Jimenez. But you just don't see him on a lot. And boy, oh fucking boy, would I kill to see him on a Superman book.
Yeah, I wonder if he's kind of slow, because you do see he'll come out with a series, do like 6 issues or so, and then there's a break. And same thing with Far Sector, like there was a big hiatus in the middle. So but you're right, his art is gorgeous, no doubt.
And he's Canadian. He's Canadian too, so he's obviously.
Well, we try not to hold that against him.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. He really is. I think he's going to get his day in the sun. I think when Naomi hits as a series, hopefully it'll do well on the CW, and the comic book starts getting some more speculator love, and I think he'll be more appreciated as an artist. In fairness, I think that because he's worked on lower, still relatively lower profile titles that I've gotten hype, but are still lower profile. I think once he gets, if he does elevate and is given some different projects, I think his day in the sun is still to come. His best days are still ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, he did obviously Naomi and then Far Sector, but before that he was on some independent stuff. Like, didn't he do a bunch of work over at Boom? Because he did some Power Rangers work. You guys know what he was working on before he came over to DC?
Not at all.
As Guardians of the Galaxy, he drew a couple issues of that for Marvel. As Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm just looking here. Looks like he did.
I think I first saw his work on Power Rangers, even though I didn't read it. I just knew. I saw some of the artwork and I was like, "Wow, who's that?" So that was where I think I first heard the name. But anyway,
he also did Ironheart. He did an Ironheart Jumbo. He did a variant cover for Ironheart #1. For Ironheart.
Yeah, I could see him doing an Iron Man book. That would be pretty sick for sure. Well, it's funny that you mentioned Jamal Campbell. He was kind of on my list, but further down. But my artist, I think, has a similar, not necessarily a similar style, but he reminds me of Jamal in a way, and it's probably because he controls so much of the artwork himself. Just like Jamal, he does all his own colors. Works digitally, so pencils, digital inks, and super talented. Been around longer than Jamal. Has a bigger body work, probably why I put him higher up on the list. And I fell in love with his work on Green Arrow when Benjamin Percy was writing it. And then he moved over to Marvel and did an incredible miniseries with Brian Edward Hill about Killmonger, and it's Juan Ferreira. And he is, no matter what he does, he brings a unique take to it. It's a very clean style. It's not necessarily as kind of realistic or hyper realistic or photorealistic as Jamal's art is. It's Juan Ferreira's, his is a little more cartoony, a little more classic comic booky. But when he just go and look at his Green Arrow work, because when you see the colors that he lays over the top of his pencil work and his rendering, that brings in the emotion. When the artist is controlling it all, from the line work to the narrative pacing to that emotion that comes with the colors, it's something really special. And that's not to say that you can't bring on a great colorist like Antonio Fabella or Trish Mulvihill or Jordi Belair or something, and have them be additive. But there's something to be said for an artist that conceives it all themselves, like Mitch Gerrard's, or Jamal Campbell or Juan Ferreira, where it's exactly what they want on the page, and it comes across in such a beautiful way. And I can't believe that Juan, I mean, his star has risen, don't get me wrong, from when he first was on Green Arrow and when I first met him, when he was just first working on Killmonger, and I met him at New York Comic Con. He showed me a bunch of pages, and I interviewed him for the show and whatnot. And so now that he's at Marvel, his star has risen a little bit, but I still don't hear enough people talking about how great his artwork is, because he always brings something special to every project he does. And again, he's one of those artists where if I see his name on a book, I'm automatically going to pay attention. Am I going to pick it up? Depending on what the concept is and who the character is, maybe, but I'm definitely going to at least check it out, right? Like, pay attention, because his art is just that good. It's just beautiful to look at. Even if I don't enjoy the story, I'm going to pick it up and flip through, like I did with the Green Lantern. Even if I'm not enjoying the story, the art is so great, I'm going to at least pick it up for that reason. So yeah. And the other reason that I wanted to be sure to put Juan on this list, he's done one of the best comic covers maybe in the last 25 years. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, it's a horror title. It's called Colder, from Dark Horse. It's a really, really interesting title. It's written, excuse me, it's written by Paul Tobin. But I remember a story Paul Tobin told about when he first got the artwork in from Juan Ferrer, and he showed it to his wife. His wife got physically ill. It's the cover for Colder #1, and the guy, the main villain, he's got his fingers up through inside his lip, and you can see his two fingers like coming up and like touching his eye, like under the skin. It is an insanely creepy cover, and that's Juan Ferrer, and Juan did the art for that series, and that's a great series too. And yeah, it's super, super creepy cover. So if you haven't seen it, just Google Colder #1 and be prepared to be freaked out.
Yeah, he's an excellent choice. He was also towards the bottom of my list here, but nonetheless incredibly talented. Just has the capacity to move in so many different directions. He can do a little bit more sort of traditional comic book, but his style tends to lean towards this illustrative quality that balances traditional cartooning and aspects of realism. There's just a smoothness to his pencils where you can tell that he takes the time to sit in there and like gradiate out his shadows. There's a real sense of depth and perspective to his work that I love. And he it's what I also like about him is that typically when guys have that ability to do sort of more illustrative or realistic rendering, they lose that movability, that energy, and he doesn't at all. I mean, he just knows where to put the camera. Specifically thinking about like his Green Arrow, I remember maybe midway through the run there was this one arc where Merlin comes back and he's chasing him down, and there's this splash image, and the camera is literally right on the tip of Ollie's arrow looking up at him as he jumps off of a rafter. And I remember thinking to myself, holy shit, this guy is talent. And he's awesome. He's just so good. Great pick.
Yeah, and he has those images that stick with you. You know, the Green Lantern issue or the Green Arrow issue that's on the train, the underground train. So many iconic images. And for the Killmonger series, that fight in the snow, in I think it's issue 4. I mean, just stunningly good. Blood on the snow, and blood flying and people punching. Yeah, fantastic.
Great pick. Rock, what are you thinking?
Well, I actually got 2 here, but another Canadian artist, and this is a series by Dark Horse that it's only on its 2nd issue. It's been blowing me away. Orphan and the Five Beasts by James Stokoe. And I'm probably mispronouncing his last name. It's Stokoe. So Stokey, I don't know. But in any event, apparently he's known for his works on Wonton Soup, Orc Stain, and Godzilla: The Half Century War, which I've read none of those. This is my first exposure to his work. And it's just the level of detail is insane. This is about essentially a sort of like a warrior monk who has to go and kill his 5 previous the dying words of his master, have him roaming the land and killing the 5 previous disciples of his master who have been possessed or are doing wrong. And the level of detail on his art is just absolutely phenomenal. It reminds me of that. Oh man, what's that one? It's not Bulletproof Monk. It's another one where there's an insane amount of detail, and it's a bald-headed monk fighter. Oh my god. It's driving me crazy. I was trying to Google it here, but for the life of me, I can't remember it. But this is something where I think he's an up and comer. I really, really do. James Stokoe, Orphan and the Five Beasts, guys. If you literally page through it, if you just look at the detail here, unfortunately, it's you can actually, isn't that funny with the green screen effect? You can actually see through the. But anyway,
he worked on that Batman annual with James Tynion, the one that's the Clown Hunter Spotlight annual. Stokoe did that. Yeah, so I think you probably read that as well. He's one of those artists that's like somebody that comic creators want to work with. Like he has he has got a lot of indie street cred, and he's one of those bucket list people that a lot of big 2 people are like, oh, I want James Stokoe. I want him to draw something for me someday. Right. He's got a very unique style, almost like a Jeff Darrow.
That's what I'm talking about. Jeff Darrow's work.
Yeah.
What series does Jeff Darrow do with that? He does that same thing. I
can't think of the name of it. All I know from Jeff Darrow is Big Guy. What is it? Big Guy and Rusty the Robot. That's the Jeff Darrow book that I know.
Yeah, I've never seen this guy's work before, but looking at it now, this guy has a stupid good sense of design and a stupid good sense for I mean singular image compositions. Like it's so busy, but he's so good at making everything stick out. Yeah. Like it's such a talent.
Shailen Cowboy. Cowboy.
Yep. Now that you say that,
that's what it is. This is Shailen Cowboy like art. And that the level of violence, evisceration, blood, guts, intestines everywhere. I mean, and just awesome fight scenes, man. He's fighting giants. He's cutting them in half. This is like visceral, great stuff, man. This puts Berserker to shame, let me tell you. And it's actually a better story too, guys. Like in all seriousness.
Isn't Jeff Darrow Canadian too? I know Steve Scroce is. What's with all you crazy Canadians up there with all the detail?
I don't know. I guess I'll have to look here.
Well, I mean, there's nothing but snow.
No, he's American. Jeff Darrow is American.
Who wants to go outside?
It's also, you got to think about it. If there's nothing but snow, their imaginations are probably working on overdrive.
Yeah, they just sit in the sky. I can't go outside. There's snow on the ground. Let me just sit here and draw more lines on this page.
I also definitely let's put Mark's question here about a comic character or property that we'd like to see some of these underrated talents tackle. Let's definitely save that as the sort of closing remarks of this. Definitely put it in the back pocket because it's a great question. So somebody I wanted to bring up is more typically known for cover art. They kind of got on my radar probably about 3 years ago because of their use of very simple compositions made striking through color play and gradation of tone. And that's Jeff DeCall. I mean, he just has these beautiful painterly colors. Again, very simple but evocative compositions, usually really only maybe one or two figures in the piece using background as a framing device. And what I like is most of the time, his artwork is very low exposure, but very high contrast. And it creates this really cinematic feel to the work in a grand way. I mean, it's hard. He's one of those guys that I'm always like, man, I feel like I would love to see him do interiors, but interior comic book art is a whole different beast than doing pinups. But god damn, are Jeff's pinups incredible. He's kind of done a little bit of everything, a little bit of Marvel, a little bit of DC, a little bit of indie, and just really well captures the flavor of what's going on inside the book. But yeah, man, just brilliant color choices, brilliant smooth gradations of tone. It's just solid talent.
Yeah, he's he reminds me of Alex Garner in that when he does a cover, he always puts a lot of thought into the way it's going to come across, like the way it's received. And it's one of those things where it can be received a different way by different people. It can evoke different. Yeah, I mean, it just like his stuff is stunning. It transcends. These aren't just comic covers, you know. He's like Liam Sharp in that way. This is fine art, you know. This is more than just, you know, oh, that's the cover of a funny book, you know. This is like good stuff for sure.
Yeah. It's, I mean, what drew me to him originally was this Nightwing cover, and I don't necessarily regret it, but I was going to get a commission from him at a New York Comic Con once, and I ended up getting original art from Robson Roca. But I've been thinking about that since like the pandemic and everything. I'm like, man,
that's a tough call.
How good would a Jeff DeCall commission look on my wall right now?
Yeah, tough call. All right, well, I'm going to shout out a writer. I think I've been flipping back and forth, and I'm gonna shout out Carla Pacheco, because her work on Spider-Woman, I never really gave a shit about Spider-Woman one way or the other, and she has made me like look forward to this book every week. It's just it is so good, and what she does with regular series artist Perez in bringing emotion and relatability, and always keeping in the back of her mind that this is one of the older, kind of well-established characters, even though I don't know that she's ever had a definitive run. It feels like what Carla Pacheco's doing now on Spider-Woman is a definitive run. She's been adding things to her background, her mythos, her family, still reverential with everything of what there has been that's come before. She's honored all that. She hasn't gone back and retconned anything. She's managed to make it all work. And other than, you know, pandemic induced delays, it's one of those books that's been on time every month. And I think a super, super underrated title. And the other thing that's really great about Carla is she loves to interact with fans, particularly Spider-Woman fans on social media, on Twitter. She's just a laugh riot. And she actually lives in Phoenix, where I live, but I've never met her. So one of these days, maybe I'll run into her at the grocery store, you know, because Phoenix is only like this big, but not really. But yeah, she's an artist or a writer rather that I don't hear enough people talking about. And I'd love to see what crazy creator-owned ideas she might have, because she seems like she would be one of those writers that has a lot of really cool kind of creator-owned wild ideas. So hopefully she can, keep that upward trajectory, and we can see more work for her. I mean, other than Spider-Woman, that's kind of how I discovered her, and I'm not even sure. I'm going to take a quick look right now what else that she's done that I might be familiar with. So yeah, Betty Page, Fantastic Four 2099. Yeah, a Gwenpool holiday special. So not a lot other than the Spider-Woman stuff. So hopefully we get a chance to see more of what she can do, because I think the work she's doing on Spider-Woman is top notch.
I've heard a lot of good things about that book.
It's great. It really is. And the latest issue that just came out, issue 11, was like issue 10 was kind of one big story. And issue 11, which came out a couple weeks ago, was a perfect jumping on point. They put Jessica Drew back in her original costume. And if you haven't been reading it, you can just pick up issue 11. It tells you everything you need to know going forward. So if anybody's curious, you can definitely pick that up without having to go back and jump on board if you want to try it out.
Cool pick. Rock'em Sock'em Robot, what are you thinking?
Well, first of all, I've been reading. Just to comment on the Spider-Woman, I've been reading that digitally, and I've been enjoying it. It's pretty good. I think that she's as underrated as Kelly Thompson. I don't know if it's. I'm not going to say it's a gender thing. I think we're past that, but I'm really impressed. All this talk in all the previous years, there was always that underlying talk about how, just you don't want to hire women just for women's sake, just for gender's sake. No, the women at the big two right now, there's all of them are doing very good jobs. Kelly Thompson, man, I think she's writing 4 of the Marvel titles I'm buying, or 2 of them are written by Kelly Thompson, Black Widow and Captain Marvel. And I'm enjoying them.
This is the best Captain Marvel, and I know Margaret Stoll, and she's amazing, and Kelly Sue DeConnick is a legend. Kelly Thompson's Captain Marvel's better than either one of those.
Wow.
I agree. And I love the fact that Kelly Thompson, she did an interview with Professor Bill at Comic Book University, and she basically strongly hinted that she really didn't like Carol Danvers' portrayal in Civil War II, which was I took that to mean, even though she never said it, that she's not a Bendis fan either. But anyways, that's she would never admit that. But yeah, she's put a lot of lipstick on the pig that was the former Carol Danvers, and now Captain Marvel, God forbid, is actually likable again. So even though I'm once again, Trevor, Dark Knight, I'm cheating, but I will throw in Kelly Thompson. I want to mention another Thompson. Can you guess which it is?
Is it the Suicide Squad writer?
Robbie?
That's what it is. Yeah. Robbie Thompson. Now, I'm giving him a shout out because I'm honestly, I learned something about him I didn't know. I'm sure, Jace, I'm sure you know, because you're more up to date on these things, but I had no idea that he wrote for Silk. He wrote season 7 to 11 of Supernatural. I had no idea. He wrote some Star Wars comics. He's done a lot of. He does a lot of his background is in TV, which shouldn't surprise me because it's AT&T. Acquiring DC. It's not surprising that they're looking into their TV division for their talent, for their comic books. And he's an up and coming talent. I think he's passionate. I think he's proven his worth early on here at Future State, and I think he's doing a pretty good job. And I want to show DC some more love. And it's I know, Jace, I'm going to give a shout out to you, even though you're probably going to do it later. I know that, Jace, you're going to be interviewing John Jackson Miller of Comic-Con sales later this week, and it'll probably be posted sometime. I guess you'll say when, but I don't know what the sales are for DC or for Marvel, and I really hope that some of these titles of these writers that we're talking about, I hope it's being reflected in the sales. And I'm glad we're doing this discussion tonight, because if somebody happens to watch it and maybe gives these writers a chance, because I think they deserve the attention.
Cool. Yeah, good point. I guess I'll pretty much give my last one. And to be fair, we could definitely do this topic in parts, there are a million other people all three of us could name in the industry, just creators that are incredible talents that just don't quite get the love they deserve. But I'm going to close out on an oldie but a goodie, a writer that I think people know that I am a fan of, and the person, doesn't have a super big library of comics work, and it's my guy Brian Hill. Guy's a great talent. I've had the fortune of interviewing him multiple times. He's a very thoughtful storyteller. But to be quite honest with you, he really hit his stride around, I would say, American Carnage. I enjoyed his detective comics, and I enjoyed a great majority of his Batman and the Outsiders. But when he did something like American Carnage, that was just ridiculously poignant and thoughtful and layered on every level. And now he's moving into doing Chariot with AWA, which is a little bit different than what we're used to him writing, but I know is very much in his DNA. He loves that 80s aesthetic. His favorite director is Michael Mann, and the guy is just a strong, really pensive writer that is considerate of what he's putting on a page in a way that I think a lot of writers aren't. He comes from a pretty major screenwriting background. I know he went to school for filmmaking, I believe. But his effectiveness of dialogue is just one of the sharpest in the industry, and he does so without being over the top. He lets dialogue be the sort of unheard wave that you ride throughout the course of his books, but I think it does so in the best way possible. You're fully entrenched in what's happening. He doesn't play around with overly flowery language, which he totally could, and some writers do that really well. But he really just gets to the heart of what matters in his stories, and generates stories that do matter, and that have something to say while also being entertaining and really employing the tools of the genre. I have a lot of respect for the guy, and I think that he's just deserves a lot more credit. Yeah,
Did you ever read Postal, the series he did it from Top Cow?
with Matt Hawkins, right?
Yeah. Well, I think Matt was on the first arc or two, and then basically it was Brian.
Yeah,
It was all Brian. Yeah.
I love that series. Postal is a prime example. I have the American Carnage series as well. Gorgeous. And also I have to say the art was fantastic. The covers are fantastic on American Carnage as well. That Postal, I mean, that the idea that the premise is such an awesome premise with, the FBI sending their criminals off to this town that is basically filled with criminals, but it's basically governed by this young adult who essentially is he has autism. He's a high functioning autistic, and he essentially runs this town. And his dad was sort of the initial person who ran the town, and he was corrupt. And he's got a dysfunctional relationship with his mother, and he's trying to make a relationship work with this kind of crazy bitch woman. And it's such a great series, so many great characters, and of course you're dealing with the criminal element, so sky's the limit. And Brian Hill just and you nailed it the way you described his use of dialogue, is that it's not superfluous. It gets to the point, and it gets to the heart of the matter. And he doesn't waste exposition. Some writers can be accused of sometimes being a little bit too expository, but not Brian Hill. He's very conservative and careful with his use of language.
Yeah. Incredibly talented. Super nice guy too. Fun to hang out with at cons for sure.
Yeah, he and I have been like talking about getting a drink since like way before the pandemic at a convention, and I'm like, man, out of all the things this convention stole from me, a drink with Brian Hill is one of those that I am most upset about.
Have you ever met him in person?
No, we haven't met. So he was the first person I ever interviewed on the channel. He put up with, at the time, I was a horrible interviewer, absolutely atrocious. And I give him so much love and respect for coming back a second and then a third time. But we'd always, and he's behind the scenes, he's been a really big guiding force for me in deciding to pursue a career creatively in writing. So, I do, I do have a sort of personal affectation towards him. But no, we've been talking about it for so long. We're like, yeah, he was gonna come down to New York Comic Con in like 2019, and then stuff ended up falling through because he had a meeting in Hollywood, and then there was another thing that we were gonna link up to do, and then the pandemic happened, and I'm like, dude, when can I just buy this guy a goddamn whiskey? Like,
Yeah, he's a great guy. Well, I got to give a quick shout out to Rocky mentioned earlier the guys over a Bad Idea. One that he didn't mention, Joshua Dysart. He has a series coming up soon, Odin's Eye, which I cannot wait for. I can't wait till more of the details get released and we can have Josh on the show to talk about it. He's such an underrated writer. His work on the Harbinger title, his work specifically on the character, the new version of Toyo Harada, is a masterclass in how to make a villain interesting and live in that gray area where you make him relatable, but you don't necessarily see eye to eye with them. And Josh has gone on record as saying he could write stories about that guy forever, and I think they'd always be relevant. It's just fantastic writer. But I'm specifically going to call out a guy that did a lot of work with the Bad Idea guys when they were still over at Valiant, and his artistic partner, who's somebody whose art I hadn't seen before, but it specifically is the art team on the Joker Harley Criminal Sanity Black Label series. So Miko Suyan and Jason Badower. Oh my God. These guys put out the best artwork that I've seen on a series probably since Bloodshot Salvation, when Louis LaRosa and Miko Suyan were doing that book. The art on this was next level. It was photorealistic when it needed to and impactful, and a lot of it was in black and white for impact. It was just stunning, and it was a realistic book. You know, you're taking Harley Quinn and you're removing kind of the zany, crazy Joker sidekick, and you're just focusing on the criminal profiler aspect and the actual scientific aspect of examining the psyche of a serial killer. And this Joker was a much more realistic version of that character, who had trauma in his childhood. He was abused by his father, and everything made sense. Everything was realistic. It was so grounded, and the realism of the artwork that both Badower and Suyan brought to the book elevated it 100%. So Cami Garcia, the writer, gave every time I would praise the book, she would throw it back to the artist saying, hey, these are the guys that have brought my vision to life. So, I mean, that is an incredible series, and the artwork on it, it's stunning. It is so, so good. And I this giant comic fan, had never heard of Badower before. Obviously I'd heard of Suyan, but I don't hear enough people talking about how incredible Miko Suyan's work is. He does a lot of variant covers too. So I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with his work. If they see it, they'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen that cover. I didn't realize that was Miko Suyan. But yeah, they're both incredibly talented. So they get my last shout out.
And I want to give Suyan a lot of credit because they have improved tremendously over the course of their career. You want to talk about somebody who is constantly adapting and bettering their craft. You look at what Suyan was doing, filling in on Moon Knight, who wrote it with when Finch was drawing it. I'm dropping his name for some reason.
Was it Max Bemis?
No,
or
no,
before Bemis.
Before Bemis. Damn. I can't quite remember, but he was doing fill-in art on the Moon Knight run that David Finch is well known for drawing. And, back then he certainly had an eye for composition, but there was a lack of cleanliness that wasn't quite chalked up to style. It was just kind of partly chalked up to experience. And you look at his work now, and it's fucking stunning. It is, I won't say a full 180 from what he was doing, because his ability to spot really deep blacks is still very present, but he is much better at dealing with the nuances of transitioning from blacks to gray tones to open areas of white. Just stunning. Really knows how to draw the eye with contrast and texture. Yeah, great pick. And like I said, I really have a soft spot for creators that just get better you know, and better and better and better, because there are plenty of folks in the industry who reach a certain point and just get worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I can't stand that, and so therefore I have to highly praise the creators that do just the opposite.
Yeah, it's driving me crazy. I'm trying to find who the writer was on that. Charlie Houston.
Yep, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, I remember hearing the old school guys, Comic Geek Speak guys, interviewing Charlie Houston when he was first starting out that title. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
I
good.
knew as soon as I heard the name, I would be, oh yeah, Charlie Houston.
It's a good run. It definitely flies under the radar a little bit, but I enjoyed it. Yeah. So what that? Yeah. So it's Rock, your move.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give for my last two. First, we gotta add I gotta sarcastically add that there was one other celebrity that I stumbled upon that I had no idea is helping to create a comic book. Did you guys know Mark Wahlberg is involved in the creation of Alien Bounty Hunter? I had no idea. Alien Bounty Hunter. It's a comic coming out. Mark Wahlberg is the co-writer. Him and Keanu Reeves and Emilia Clarke. I mean, who knew? So I mean, I'm gonna check that out. I'm curious as hell. I mean,
who's the co-writer with Wahlberg on that?
I don't know. I was just taking notes, and I was just looking around. I was like, what the hell? But Mark Wahlberg, Alien Bounty Hunter, is like, good Lord, what? But in any event, I want to give a shout out to David Hazan. I know nothing about him, but I'm reading Nottingham. Full disclosure, I saw Nottingham on a spec list, but this is actually one of those few spec list titles that is actually the story's really good, because a lot of times it's not, a lot of times it's just speculator hype, but it's not actually a good story. This is actually a good story. It flips the mythology of Robin Hood on its head. Maybe Robin Hood is a serial killer. Maybe the sheriff of Nottingham was the good guy, trying to keep the peace, and it sort of throws it on its head. It's that might sound a little tropey, but David Hazan, and I've just read the first issue. He caught my eye. It ended on a cliffhanger. It's Lady Marion, not Maid Marion. So he's sort of flipping some different things. He's playing with the tropes a bit. I think it's original, despite the fact that it's dealing with a very an old age mythology. But wait, Nottingham, check out.
So you've read one issue from this guy?
Yeah, just one issue. Yeah. Well, hey, man, up and coming creator. I mean, it's why not?
I've heard a lot of good things about that book, actually.
Yeah.
No idea if they're true.
I can literally rattle off, guys. I got a whole list here of names and writers that I could rattle off, but I mean, good Lord, a lot of them I think are sort of like, I think so many of the big time writers, like from Al Ewing, David Hine, even Jeff Johns, Alex DeCampi, John Layman, Scott Snyder, Joshua Williamson, James Tinian, Sardasky, Lemire, Brubaker, Rucka, Remender, Pichetshote, Walker, Gerard Roy, Azzarello, Taylor, Barnes, Joe Hill, Karen Gillan, Donnie Cates. We didn't even mention 5 big time guys hitting the movie.
Donnie Cates is not.
Dude. I'm just saying, but these guys. My point is that when I saw the patterns here, these guys are making more of a hit with their indie work than they are for the big two. And these are like, and the new writers. I mean, I had Stephanie Phillips, Robbie Thompson, Chris Condon.
Save it. We'll do a part 2. Definitely save some for another one, because we could.
There's just I mean, it's just incredible. The list. I mean, good God. It's like
you also just rattled off like some of the biggest names in the industry in a video about unseen gems. I mean,
well, first of all, these are unseen gems. You want to bet that these aren't unseen gems? With all due respect, these are unseen gems. The sale. If you're talking about no, we're not. We're talking about unseen gems. How do you want to define what we're talking about?
Scott Snyder is a hidden gem. Snyder.
No. Well, wait a minute. I'm talking. When you said hidden gem, I can either interpret that to mean the titles are a hidden gem. Well, because I mean, how many people are collecting all their titles? Very few. How many people are collecting Sweet Tooth?
I believe.
How many people are collecting Descender? Gideon Falls.
I believe the thumbnail says comic book creators that you should pay attention to.
I think people should pay attention to that Jeff Johns guy that Rocky mentioned. He may have a future writing comics. I'm not sure. I mean, he may be the biggest kept secret in the comic industry.
Not if cancel culture has anything to say about it.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Oh boy, I love it. We end a video on Hidden Gems. Rocky's like Jeff Johns, Scott Snyder, fucking Alan Moore, guys, Alan Moore. Oh man, yeah. I mean, this is definitely one of those things again that we could rattle off a bunch of names, hopefully that are a little bit less well known than Emilia Clarke and Keanu Reeves. But yeah, the point is despite the fact that comics are considered a pretty tight knit community, there are so many guys and girls that are just creating incredible work that just don't really get the attention that they deserve. So, you know, if this serves as anything, like go out of your way. You know, when you see something that remotely interests you, check it out, give it a look. Comics are expensive. I know, I get it. But especially looking out in the indie market, man, there's a ridiculous amount of high concept and entertaining work that is just that manages to be some of the most exciting content out there in the industry. You know, like if you had met me over a year ago and said like my priority on my pull list was reading my indie books, I would have told you were fucking nuts. And here I am. Like that's all I like. If you're telling me to read a big 2 book, like immediately off my stack, I would like whatever the opposite of I fuck is, I would do that and tell you to leave me the fuck alone because I want to go read my indie stuff. So there's a lot of great talent out there. And, you know, we also kind of referred to a lot of big name creators that are now moving into the indie space so that they can have a little bit more creative control and be untethered by, Jace's secret lover, Pamela Lifford, and folks of that prestige.
So I've been thinking about your question, Mark, about what title I'd like to see some of the creators I mentioned on. Might as well go with a crazy character who hasn't been around much, certainly hasn't had his own title in decades. So my pick, I want a Carla Pacheco, Juan Ferreira illustrated. So Carla Pacheco is writer, Juan Ferreira illustrating Blue Devil from DC.
Sick.
Okay. I think that Carla Pacheco would bring the humor and the fun, and Juan Ferreira would his art can be humorous at times, but he would bring some really kick-ass visuals to the sort of magical aspect of Blue Devil, and I think it would rock. I think it would be really fucking awesome. I'd love to see that book.
Oh, that'd be really dope. I like that. I was just thinking, I didn't give a lot of thought to the artist, but I really want to see Brian Hill on an Iron Man book on Tony Stark and deal with a lot of that sort of emotional and sort of mental tumult with Tony Stark, maybe play into the sort of stressors of being a top the line capitalist and things of that nature. I think Brian would really take an interesting, considerate spin on the character, something that I feel like he needs. Because I feel like we haven't had like a definitive Iron Man story in a good while. And the last one wasn't even Tony Stark. It was Dr. Doom. So, you know, I think Brian would certainly do him his justice. I would say Jamal Campbell, but I think I want somebody who's going to have a little bit more grit to the work. You know, maybe since I'll steal from Jace and go Miko Suyan and Brian Hill on an Iron Man book.
Yeah, that would, yeah. It'd have to be like bi-monthly because Miko's not the fastest, but
fuck it, man.
Yeah, I'd read that for sure.
What about you, Rock?
I would put Keanu Reeves on a Richard Dragon series. And I would
and you'd get
and I think it would be awesome, and DC should pay top dollar for it. I think it would be awesome. I'd make sure that Peach Momoko did the variant covers with Lady Shiva on it. Of course, she would be a key appearance with guest writer Kelly Thompson
and James Stocco doing the interiors.
Absolutely, he'll do the 1 in 10 variant.
Oh,
Well,
God.
you know, if you're doing a Keanu Reeves book, I think mandatory by law, you have to have 50 variant covers per issue.
Exactly.
50. I thought we were going 500.
Oh my God, ridiculous. So
But
ridiculous.
like he won't sign it unless unless you make a Richard Dragon book that is vaguely similar to John Wick.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay. Just give Richard Dragon a dog or a cat or a pet or something, and have Lady Shiva kill his dog and have him just lose it.
Oh,
It'll
God.
be good.
Yeah,
It'll be-
it actually turns out that boom is the sound of the industry collapsing under all the goddamn variant covers. It was a prescient title for the publisher. Boom, you broke us. Way to go.
Yeah, if I see another printing of Something Is Killing the Children with another incentive variant, I might blow my brains out.
Yeah,
But-
you're pretentious when
Fuck you.
when you just put the letters. When you just put the letters of the title, it's like that's how pretentious it is. It's not Something Is Killing the Children. It's SIKTT. Her head's in the way.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
See,
it's sick. Did you read this week's issue of Sick? Yeah, it was great.
Second printing.
I just no, I can't. No. You know what's
Good
crazy?
times.
The funny thing is like that book through all of these speculator hype has brought so many people in, and that's the one thing that brought me out. I was in on that book from the get-go, and the quality was fine. I'm just honestly so annoyed with all the other people that are like, buying the 12th print, fuck you variant with the logo as initials. Like, something about it really kind of killed my buzz on that book.
Yeah, I picked up like all the covers for the first, or like 3 or 4 different covers for the first issue, bought the second and third issue, never got around to reading it, and then just fell off, and I still have never read it. It's like the one Tynan book that I never really got into. I mean, I even bought and read Win, Department of Truth is great.
Mhm.
But yeah, for some reason I just never got around to reading that one.
You're missing out. I think you guys are. It's amazing. I love Something Is Killing the Children. It's really not hype. I just had it on my pull list. I just got the first printings of every issue, and for all the talk of speculators, the first 10 or 11 issues are ridiculously priced because of the spec market. But really, for all the talk that people and hype that people gave it, still very few people collected it. The print runs were still low. It just goes to show you how many people like maybe gave it lip service but never actually bought the comic. I had it on my pull list from the beginning. I was in early on, and I reviewed it. I collected the first 7 issues, and then I did a video of it. I read all 8 issues on one summer day, and I did a video on it. Absolutely loved it. This is going to be, I'm not the only one to predict this. It's going to be an amazing, when this is a series, this is going to be a rated R hardcore. I don't know if it's going to be Netflix or whatever it's going to be, but
I think it already got optioned.
Yeah, it did. And I think it's already been, I think they're even casting it already. If I recall reading, but it really is amazing. And the lead character, the Slaughter character there. Wow. I mean, she's a great character. I mean, oh man, it's going to be good. This is something where I'm so glad I got in on the ground floor on it. And I got that very first Jenny Frison cover, and it's one of the things where it's a low print run. It earned its place. It's earned its popularity. To me, it's another Walking Dead, quite frankly. It's earned its place. I don't think it's all just hype. It's earned it. It's a great story.
All right, I'll sell my copies for $2,000. Anybody, just reach out, let me know.
Hey,
I got 3 or 4 of
I've still been picking up the book, man. I mean, I enjoyed it when I was reading it. Like I said, I don't know. The Rockies of the world just killed it for me, I guess.
Hey, man, if you don't like James Tynion's Batman, that's fine, but you got to love his Something Is Killing the Children.
Listen, you know what I do love is his Department of Truth. That's pretty damn good.
That is good too, yes.
But yeah, interesting list of shenanigans. Mark Mckeever displaying his love of Geiger and Radiant Black and all of the millions of covers this man has been buying. You know what, man? you're not doing drugs. So if you're hooked on Geiger and Radiant Black covers, man, I can't be mad.
That Geiger glow in the dark cover is pretty damn cool. I will admit. I will admit.
Mine doesn't glow in the dark. Mine doesn't glow in the dark. What am I supposed to? Am I supposed to piss on it, or how do I get it to glow?
It's not allowed to glow in the dark in Canada. It's contractually obligated to not work in Canada.
Cross the border and it doesn't work. I want my money back.
Somebody stands over the border, takes the book, puts their arm out, elevates it over the border. Oh fuck. Oh yeah, no. It's there's a cool list, and I'm sure we could do a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's going to be rotating and changing. I think that the only thing we can hope by then is that some of these names that we've mentioned just, get bigger and bigger and higher profile work and get the opportunity to be the movers and shakers of the industry. You know what I mean? Like these are the type of people we want behind what sort of represents comics and what represents the genre and the medium and us as fans ultimately. So
yeah, and even if that cover doesn't glow in the dark for you, Rocky, at least you're supporting that up-and-comer Jeff Johns. Hopefully he can make a name for himself.
I had to buy 4 covers just to put food on his table.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and that no name, what's his name? Gerald Franken. Like, never ever seen anything by that guy. Also, thank you for the love, Samoki dude. I would also like to take on a big 2 character. Obviously, Batman's the first choice, but I would love to be the guy to make Barry Allen actually interesting. That'd be great. That'd be cool. Yeah. I got me a Barry Allen story that I would love to tell. So yeah, plenty of other characters, but hopefully they will get written one day. So I'm not gonna say it now. Yeah. So there's that. A lot of great books, a lot of great stuff for you guys to be reading. If you haven't already, feel free to go back through the video, check out some of these names, pick up some of their books. We mentioned a lot of great independent titles and big 2 titles that are worth checking out, most of which are probably collected in trade to some capacity. So definitely do so. Gentlemen, we'll start with the Rocka Flocka Flame from the most northern regions of North American continent. My guy, what do you got coming out?
I sound like a broken record all the time. I've got my top 50 and 60. I'm still working on the video. I want to get all my comics. It's really a pain in the ass. I started off with, it was 375 or some damn thing, and I narrowed it down to then 200, then 150 to my top 50 top sentimental comics. But then putting them in order, putting them in the right pile, putting them in a box, getting ready, creating my thumbnails for the video. It takes a long time to do that. And then streamlining my stories, because there's a story behind each one. And I got to do it in a series of a number of videos. It's a pain in the ass. I mean, it's a labor of love, but that is going to be coming out realistically, probably not for a couple of weeks, but it's I'm enjoying doing that.
Cool. Jace, I know you always have a full gambit, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, I got a lot of things going on. Hopefully Matt Kemp's going to be on this coming weekend, talk a little bit about Walesville and ENIAC. And then Rocky mentioned something I'm really looking forward to. It'll be out on Friday for you all to listen to. I'm talking to John Jackson Miller from Comicron, the go-to site for the last, 15 years when it comes to comic book sales. Yeah. And specifically, we're going to be talking to John about the change with DC moving over to Lunar and Marvel moving over to Penguin Random House. Are numbers going to be available? What's the value of these numbers? And just kind of get his thoughts on how the sales have been and how the pandemic has affected things. So a little bit of general talk and then a little bit of kind of behind the scenes nuts and bolts stuff. And I'm hoping John's going to say, yeah, I have an in. My neighbor growing up works at Lunar, and my wife's cousin's butcher daughter works at Penguin Random House, and I'm going to have these numbers for you guys because I think there's a lot of value to them. I think it's a great gauge, and now it gets all cloak and dagger. And who can you try? I mean, nothing against the PR people that work at the comics because they work really hard, and I know a lot of them personally, but their job is to promote comics, which doesn't always necessarily dovetail with honest data.
Yeah.
You can massage numbers to make them say whatever you want to say. Believe me, I work in the restaurant industry, and that's done all the time. So
Yeah.
I know that is a thing. So having an independent site like Comic-Con, I think, is invaluable, and I would hate to see it go away.
Yeah, you make a really good point. It is, and I'm sure that interview with him is going to be a really great sort of industry eye opener, for readers that might not otherwise have that sort of look at at his perspective and the sort of
Yep.
metrics behind it all. So yeah, make sure you guys go check them out. These guys, there are links in the descriptions below to both of their content creation platforms and their social media. If you want to stick around here, I honestly have no idea what I'm doing next week. I'm going to New York, and I work like crazy this week and have been working on actual comic book stuff. So I'm not sure what I have coming out on the channel next week, but I do have a really cool interview with the writer of the recently released The Good Asian Pornsak Pichetshote that we filmed last week that I would highly encourage you guys check out, and I would encourage you check out his work. The only reason I didn't bring him up is just because he has such a small body of work right now in comics, but he's an absolute talent, a really great guy to chat to, and gives a lot of great insights as to his approach with The Good Asian specifically. It's a good book, by the way. I've read the first 3 issues. You guys know I'm no bullshit. It's one of the most exciting comic books on the stands right now, and I'm almost more mad that I read 3 issues because now I got to wait for issue 4. So
I am in the same boat. I interviewed him like 6 weeks ago and read the first 3 issues. I got an even longer wait. So I'm glad that the book is finally out. But yeah, I got another 2 months. And his first title, Infidel, is also
really good.
Well worth your time.
It's on Comixology Unlimited too, for all you guys out there that have that. But no, the funny thing is that when we brought up doing the interview a little over a month ago, he gave me the books to read then. So I've been also marinating on these for far too long. But yeah, also aside from the YouTube stuff, if you want to check out my comic book work, go down, link in the description below, DarkKnightNation.com/shop. Pick up my work there. There's also means to find my publishing social media, which I highly encourage you follow. I'm trying to implement a little bit more interactivity and getting perspectives on what people are looking for books. I also have a couple convention appearances planned for this summer going into the fall, which I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for all of that. And I might perhaps have another, aside from finishing off the Helix project, another thing in the works. So stay tuned for all of those shenanigans. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank these 2 gentlemen for joining me and shooting the shit for a little bit about some hidden gems like Keanu Reeves and Emilia Clarke and such. And hopefully we'll see you guys very soon on another episode of Let's Talk Comics. Have a great night.